What is driving this global obsession of living longer?
It's multifactorial, well-being becoming the new religion. That alongside the pandemic where everyone on earth viewed health as strongest competitive advantage. Bryan Johnson. Bryan openly wears on his t-shirt, don't die.
One earthquake or one tsunami or one plane crash can finish it all. Do you agree with Bryan Johnson's takes on everything? I want to know about that first.
He thinks that humans have reached the generation where potentially we don't need to ever die again.
All the research that is happening in the West, but as Indian bodies, our health challenges are far different.
India is a protein deficient country. 90% of everyone's bloods who I look at are deficient in basic supplements.
So when somebody is going to select a protein, what is the one thing that somebody should look at?
Turn the packet over and look at the label. Now, number one thing you want to make sure you see is sleep is a big problem in the country. We are amongst the most sleep-deprived countries anywhere.
How can an individual break free from these self-destructive patterns that silently are reducing a health span?
I talk about this idea called the awakening.
How do you do this in India? हेलो, मेरा नाम है कुणाल जयसिंह। अगर आपको भी सीखने का शौक है या इन्फॉर्मेशन गेन करने का शौक है तो प्लीज मेरे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कीजिए, और इस लंबे एपिसोड के हाइलाइट्स अगर देखने हैं तो कुणाल जयसिंह क्लिप्स को सब्सक्राइब कीजिए और मुझे स्पॉटिफाई पे जरूर फॉलो कीजिए। इन सबके लिंक्स नीचे डिस्क्रिप्शन में। Dr. Marcus, welcome to Unlock with Kunal Jaisingh.
Thank you.
This is going to be one of the very rare and very few conversations that happen on this channel for two reasons. One, we're going to talk about something which the world is talking about, how to live long.
Okay.
I'm going to break that down because I personally believe living long and actually living life with whatever years you have, personally is more interesting.
Sure.
And probably I will get a different perspective from you. Second of all, this podcast is going to be in English. So that's also something.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yes. So great. So heading off, I want to understand from your perspective as a longevity physician, coach, doctor.
Yeah.
What is driving this global obsession of living longer? Is it the fear of death? Is it, the desire to create an impact? Or is it just, curiosity?
I think it's multifactorial. I'd written an article about 5-6 years ago where I spoke about well-being becoming the new religion. In many ways, life is changing so fast because of technology. It's connecting us, but it's also making us lonely and isolated at the same time. People are desperately searching for a sense of community, searching for a sense of purpose, searching for a sense of belonging. And we're also reaching phases of sort of human societal evolution where some of the basics are being taken care of. And younger people today can start to think about, okay, what is more important to me in my life and how do I want to shape that life going forward? So I think that alongside the pandemic where suddenly globally there was a moment where everyone on earth viewed health as his or her strongest competitive advantage, and having to think about what are the things that will make me more competitive, i.e. healthier over a period of time. I think these are some of the things that I see which have sort of come together, coalesced together, which are making people now sort of sit up and think about, okay, you know what does a good life mean? How do I live better? How do I avoid frailty in the way I see it in my parents or my grandparents before them? And what are the changes that I can make using technology and some of the latest science to be part of that journey? So that's sort of how these things I see it is coming together. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think anyone will debate if you ask this question that do you want to live long? I think 99 out of 100 people will say yes.
It's interesting. It really depends on how you define long. And I'll share with you a couple of examples, right? Every time I get in front of a group of people in, with a corporate talk or an audience, I often ask the question, who would like to live to be, let's say, 60, 70, 80, 90? And I notice that the older that number becomes, fewer and fewer hands stay raised. They start to come down. And then a natural follow-up question is, why did you then drop your hand? And they reply, well, I don't live in disease. I've seen, the suffering and all of those things. So I think there's one track which we need to address off the bat, which is when we talk about living long, we don't just mean in a state of old health like we see today, which is one with disease and sickness. hopefully through this conversation, we can talk about how do we live healthier for longer, right? And what does that mean? So I think that's one piece for sure. The other is longevity is very relative. If we were doing this podcast in the late 1800s, a person who is considered to be old would be probably someone who's younger. I don't know your age, but certainly much younger than I am, where global life expectancy was
About 40.
yeah, exactly, right? Late 30s, 40s. Then the World War came. We saw the advent of antibiotics, and that pushed it along further. 1960s, 1970s, generic medications. So some of the communicable or non-communicable diseases were also being addressed. So this term longevity continuously gets pushed further and further out. And where we are today versus 1960, and I know the numbers because McKinsey had done a research study around this globally, they found that since 1960 to 2019, just before the pandemic, which created a slight drag on the average life expectancy, over the world, we saw a 19-year addition to the global life expectancy.
And why was that?
Primarily because of generic medicines, better surgical techniques, and the single biggest factor was that China, India, and some parts of sub-Saharan Africa raised the people out of the poverty line. So infant mortality went down and maternal mortality also went down. So that added a lot. But since then, and certainly if you talk to scientists in the field, there's a big question mark, which is there truly a finite limit to human life expectancy, which might be 120 to 122, because that's the longest known humans that we know, at least documented and credible? Or is there a possibility through technology, biotechnology, engineering, all this stuff we'll go into, where that number could potentially be pushed out further? Right now, the consensus is very much divided. And I'm certainly in the camp of that we seem to have a finite limit. Let's enjoy that limit. Let's make sure it's as healthy for as long as possible, but then allow the next generation to then take over from there, right? So that's sort of my framework.
So tell me one thing.
Yeah.
This whole thing came about, it became famous is when from the West, a few people have started experimenting on themselves. For example, Bryan Johnson.
Yeah.
They come down to India also. And even though I don't completely agree to his views,
Yeah.
because they do not address the Indian way of living.
Yeah.
So his is more on the United States front, and plus also he has all the resources in the world, where he's taking thousands of pills. He's having machines made for him specifically
Yeah.
to, kind of regenerate his cells and skin and the works.
Yeah.
But when you come to India, like what he addressed, I kind of agree with, because we as Indians, when we look at longevity and living healthier and living a longer, healthier life, a lot of things are not in our control, because we still are struggling at least in our metropolitans and tier 1 cities with air quality.
Yeah.
I think that's something that is very important, because I know I kind of complain about it.
Sure.
Our sanitation, our hygiene and everything, all of these things also will add up to how healthy and long, and these are something which is not in your control.
Yeah.
So how do you view that from the Indian perspective?
Yeah. So
First of all, do you agree with Bryan Johnson's takes on everything? I want to know about that first.
okay, I have had the chance to spend time with him over the last few years that he's been doing things. We've interacted at some conferences and events that he's done. I've certainly been looking closely at what he's trying to do in terms of a blueprint protocol. And I think there is this group of, let's call them Silicon Valley tech bros, like Peter Diamandis, like Tony Robbins, obviously Brian, folks like that, who are trying to solve for lifespan. Brian openly wears on his t-shirt, "Don't die." Right. So for him, success is that he believes, to some degree, I imagine, or at least convincingly speaks about the fact that he thinks that humans have reached the generation where potentially we don't need to ever die again. And there's a sense of immortality that can potentially exist. I'm not in that camp.
Thank you for saying that.
Right. I think that there is actually an evolutionary or design, a reason why we do die. It allows for fresh ideas. It allows for freshness in nature. It allows for survival of the fittest and the best and a certain degree of progression through that. And I think, therefore, that it's better for us humans to consider the fact that we have the 10 years odd, depending on how lucky we are with certain things. And we can talk about genetics as well. But what do we do to ensure that that's maximally enhanced to our benefit? That cognitively we enjoy the silver years, that our physical bodies allow us to be self-dependent, that we can be a contributing member of society, financially, economically, and ideologically as well into our 8th and 9th decade and beyond. So that's certainly the quest that I'm trying to live my life, and how I design for the life that my wife and my family and all that we live at home, and in the patients and clients that I care for as well. But to answer your question directly, this was a question posed a few years ago, where was it nature, i.e. your genes, or is it nurture? Is it the choices you make, like the environment that you just described? And what this data is suggestive of is that around 14, 16, 18% potentially comes through your genetic makeup. The rest is because of 3 things. Number 1, where you live. Number 2, the people you spend time with. And number 3, the lifestyle choices you make. And it's actually in that order as well.
Okay.
So where you live will dictate the quality of air, the quality of water, the sound, the environmental stress levels, the exposure to toxins, the food you consume. All of those things have a huge, big role to play on the human body. We are part of the biosphere. Everything that we do impacts it, and vice versa. And potentially climate change might enter this conversation. It's certainly something that I'm very passionate about, because there's a massive shift which is going to happen in the next 2-3 decades, which will influence human longevity as well. The second is who you spend time with. You are more likely to be divorced if someone in your immediate circle is also divorced. You are more likely to be obese if someone in your immediate circle is also obese. You're more likely to be a runner or play pickleball if someone in your friend circle is a runner or a pickleball. It's human tendency. We are social apes. We tend to mirror and conform to the tribe around us, and normalization of certain sort of choices in life happens as well. So it's true, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend time with. And often people ask me, okay, doc, I want to run a marathon, or I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I tell them, well, just find someone who does that and become friends with that individual, and you're more likely to then take on those behaviors as well. And the last is therefore the choices you make, which is a direct linkage to the people you spend time with. So we can therefore assume that around 80% of your probability of living to be 90 years is down to those 3 aspects. And therefore, you and everyone watching this are in much more power and control than you understand or appreciate. It's not about, these are my genes, my parents were diabetic, therefore I'll become diabetic. No, you have the ability to change that, but it's a trajectory. And the earlier you start investing in yourself, the better.
Let me break down the first thing which you said was nature.
Yeah.
The choice where you live. Now, you are a longevity doctor, coach, physician in Mumbai, India.
Yeah.
Where we, let's not lie or to ourselves, like, we don't have the best air, we don't have the best sanitation, we don't have the best hygiene standards, we don't have anything.
Yeah.
How does an average Indian male or female ride this wave, which everyone in the world is right now trying to ride?
Yeah.
And they are at a little advantage of being in a more developed country, lesser population. So, the resources are also higher.
Yeah.
Probably their incomes are also higher.
Yeah.
How do you do this in India?
No, it's damn hard. I won't beat around the bush. There are statistics wherein breathing Bombay air is like having 5 to 6 cigarettes a day. Breathing Delhi air at winter is the equivalency of a packet of cigarettes a day, right? So huge implications, particularly for the young parents out there. I've got 2 young kids, so I think about this almost on a daily basis. We are living in a city, Bombay at least, which is, I don't know if they're looking for oil or what. It's just continuously being dug up and redone. So there's all the dust and the particulate matter and the noise and the sound, etc. And then even if you think systemically, we celebrate a culture of convenience. We celebrate the idea that we can get a vehicle to pick us up from anywhere and take us anywhere without having to walk significantly to catch that public transport. We celebrate the idea that we can have any calorie delivered to this door in less than 10 minutes typically the worst calories there can be, which is ultra-processed, high fructose corn syrup type sugary foods. We celebrate the idea that through our devices, we can be connected to the world, but we forget that it is also completely at odds with the circadian rhythm, our ability to sleep, to disconnect, and for the brain to relax and refresh, etc. So some of these are systemic issues because of the culture that we are building for ourselves. And oftentimes I will go head to head with some of the technology entrepreneurs and try and get them to see the other side of the equation. And the other side is the fact that, yeah, frankly, we're in a 1.45 billion person country, still developing, still trying to grow ourselves out of these problems. And therefore, there's the environmental standards and effects that they have. But one mustn't sort of give up hope in all of these things. Simple, small things that we can try to control for. For example, have a home which has got a lot of greenery in it, potted plants. If you can afford to have an air purification unit, use an air purification unit, particularly in the winter months when the PM 2.5 is at the highest that there are. Choose your food choices very particularly. So we're very strict at home. We don't eat out of bottles, jars, and packets. Obviously you buy the raw materials, but eat proper whole food, cook whole food.
Examples?
If you're making pasta, my kids love pesto. We'll make the pesto at home.
You won't buy it off the rack.
Exactly. We have a basil plant on our balcony, which we'll pluck the leaves off. We'll get some nice Parmesan cheese and some pine nuts, olive oil, and we'll make the pesto. If you're cooking a bolognese, then make the tomato sauce. And we forget that we also have a country where home help is more abundant than in the West. So we can actually cook real food and eat it as opposed to relying on packaged oven microwave meals. But it just does require some planning. It does require some sort of discipline in what you eat and the taste and all of those things. But you can make these things work in your favor. So
basically what you're trying to say is, say for the Indian family who likes their bhindi dal roti. So like don't order because our Indian cooking is great, because a lot of our a lot of what we eat, our roti sabzi, we do make it from scratch. We buy the sabzi from outside in raw, we cut it, cook it, eat it.
Yeah.
It's when we try and get into the whole pasta burger thing is when convenience starts looking.
Yeah.
Because if you ask an average Indian person, somewhere in the conversation they will say ghar ka khana. So that ghar ka khana has actually a lot of value to it because it's being cooked in front of you. You know exactly what's going in and you're in control of it.
Exactly.
Rather than, like you said, like a pesto or a bolognese or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is processed for convenience.
Right. And even the choices of what raw materials are used, like the oil that you will cook with, right? Make sure you're using an anti-inflammatory oil like mustard oil, or coconut oil, or ghee, right? India has such beautiful A2 ghee that we should be cooking in, as opposed to using the seed oils, which we know are quite inflammatory and raise cardiovascular risk. If you're buying grain to make your rotis at home, try and opt for grains which are non-gluten in origin. So we have GHAR, we have bajra, we have ragi, we have millets. These are low glycemic, these are low inflammatory grains that we can consume.
But then again, the argument happens that we are not a gluten-sensitive country.
There is a distinction between gluten sensitivity that leads to celiac disease and gluten sensitivity that drives low-grade inflammation. Because the type of wheat that is being grown today is very different to the wheat that was grown in the 40s and 50s, which was less processed, more digestible by the gut. This grain is more inflammatory. It's hyper-processed. It creates a level of inflammation in the gut, which then leads to a heightened inflammation in the blood and then puts you more at risk of metabolic diseases, etc. Same with dairy products, right? It is true that not everyone is dairy intolerant, but there is certainly a degree of sensitivity. Paneer and yogurt and dahi is excluded from this.
Why so?
Because of the microorganisms that live in those products. So the fact that those organisms exist mean they change the conformational shape of the molecules, and it's no more an inflammatory molecule within the body.
So curd, paneer is all good.
They're great, absolutely great, and great sources of protein as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So again, like getting back to this thing, so what else can they do? Eat wholesome food.
Yep.
Home cooked food,
Yep.
basically.
Yep.
And
Avoid the toxins which we know have bad effects on the body. Smoking, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's vaping, whether it's the the BD type of cigarettes, etc. Chewing tobacco is a massive problem. There's a lot of oropharyngeal cancers which are caused because of these things. So avoiding those sort of toxins, which again culturally are much more prevalent in certain economic strata as well. Movement is a big issue here in the country. I completely understand that we don't have a public infrastructure that supports movement, especially in the metropolitan cities. And therefore, we need to create those opportunities to move. I've seen in the corporate world this happen where people are increasingly adopting standing desks, or they have those very simple walking mats that you can put under your desk, which is sort of not even electrically powered, but just human powered, where you're just like you're standing on a treadmill and walking around. People who are visiting airports and getting flights on a frequent basis, I remind them, use the stairs, don't use the escalator. Walk along the travelator. You need not be on the travelator. Make a meeting in your day, a walking or a standing meeting, even with your team. A lot of the corporate offices that exist now, there is always a communal space. So you can make sure you're getting those 10, 12 minutes of walking after a break in between meetings, etc. So that's also really, really important from a movement perspective. What else? Sleep is a big problem in the country. We are amongst the most sleep-deprived countries anywhere on Earth. Absolutely, yeah. And sleep is so intimately linked with so many aspects of longevity. One of the biggest reasons I think why, or contributions I think why we're seeing an obesity epidemic to the tune of 40 to 50% in certain metropolitan cities as well, is because we're also very, very sleep deprived. Sleep deprivation leads to a resistance in the body's ability to use insulin to manage blood sugar. And therefore, we're seeing larger and larger spikes in diabetes, cardiometabolic disease, fatty liver disease, etc. Sleep directly leads to stress and burnout, or a lack of sleep directly leads to stress and burnout. And also sleep deprivation has a long-term consequence for the development of certain neurodegenerative disorders like dementia, Alzheimer's disease, etc. So sleep plenty, sleep early, and sleep with good quality. These are things which are very important.
You do say that sleep early. Is there a particular time that an average person should go to sleep?
Absolutely. We have a public service announcement at home. We had some friends over the other night. At 9 p.m., we have this Alexa device. And Alexa says, it's time for bed. And everyone's like looking at each other like, what the hell is going on here? But that's our public service announcement. Internally, it reminds us every day that it's time to start to wind down and head to the bedroom. There is no doubt that we are these circadian organisms. We wake with the rising of the sun, and we are meant to start to relax at the setting of the sun. All of your hormonal biochemistries, from the secretion of cortisol in the morning to melatonin at night, to adrenaline, to insulin, to leptin, all of these things follow a very basic circadian rhythm. We know it in our ancient wisdoms. Ayurveda has spoken about this for so many thousands of years. We've forgotten some of those things as we've sort of matured into a modern economy. But there is a lot of truth in that as well. So eat at particular times, sleep at particular times. There's a lot of benefits we can accrue from these things.
It's very interesting because you're saying circadian rhythm. Yeah. And I speak to Ayurveda doctors through this podcast, nutritionists. All of them speak about the circadian rhythm and how we should sleep, because in earlier time we didn't have a clock.
Absolutely.
So as the sun goes down, you eat your dinner at around 6:30.
Yeah.
And by 8:30, even in villages today, if you go and see, by 8:30, everybody is retired. They're ready to go to sleep because they're going to wake up at 4:30.
Yeah.
I spoke to a neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, he had a little different perspective. He said that as long as you're getting 8 hours of your sleep cycle, it's not going to have an effect on your brain. If you're sleeping less than 8 hours, 9 hours, depending on person to person, that is where problems start happening, where dementia or brain cells not regenerating and a lot of other things are happening, because I'm getting these two perspectives. So how do I view that?
I would reconcile it through the following, which is, if you were looking at hard data alone, one could make an argument that it's the length of sleep in the day to give the body rest. However, we don't live in a closed system. We live in an open system. By that, I mean that you can't sleep 8 hours in the middle of the day
Yeah.
with the sun blazing in, the temperature being elevated, and think you're going to get the same restful sleep. That is just not the case. And anyone who's experienced jet lag will know exactly what I mean by that. So
Or even people who do night shifts.
Oh, exactly, which is actually a very big epidemic against longevity in the country, because in many ways we are the global south business center for so many parts of the world, and people are having tough lives because of it, whether it's call centers or IT back office support, security guards, doctors, firemen, all these things.
Absolutely.
So yes, the number of hours, you could be very clinical about it, but the reality of life is that you get your most appropriate, deepest, restful sleep when nature intends for it to be the case.
Tell me one thing. According to you,
Yeah.
what is more important, living long or living healthy, but with limited maybe a lifespan?
Well,
Because we are in India, because we are in cities and we don't have the resources.
yeah. Look, so the motto that I try to propagate is live healthier for longer, right? Now it's, one may say, okay, I'm neither answering you here or there. I'm sort of sitting on the fence. We all want that for ourselves, which is to grow old gracefully, and enjoy the benefits of growing old, the wisdom that comes with it, the relationships that accrue through that, etc. But we don't want to do it in a way which is frail and sick and suffering and expensive through that process. So that for me is sort of mission.
What are the damaging health trends that you are seeing in our system right now with the millennials and the Gen Zs and even the boomers?
More so than what we've already discussed. I think the convenience culture is a massive issue for
I agree with you. You know
Yeah.
why? Because on one hand, we are looking at healthier, longer lives.
Yeah.
And come on, the people who are actually living healthier and longer are the people who are still in the tier 2, tier 3 villages and all these things, because they have a routine,
Yeah.
and they have the physical
Yeah.
exercise
Yeah.
and the discipline to it. On the other hand, we are promoting these quick delivery apps, which is kind of taking us away from movement.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I was small also, I mean, if my mom wanted something from the store,
Yeah.
she would tell, okay, run,
Exactly.
go and get it. So
Right.
I would.
Yeah.
And I live in a place where there's a slope. So
Yeah.
I used to be like 4 or 5 times I go up and down the slope, and then you walk to the store, pick it up, walk back, and you get home. That's 15 minutes of exercise, maybe 2-3 times a day, because you're going down to play with tuitions.
Yeah.
Today it's a 10-minute delivery at your doorstep.
Correct. Yeah.
So I mean, how is this two things? Because we are not viewing our business culture in that sense. We're just looking at making money now.
Yeah, I know. So this is systemic, right? That involves like the VCs, private equities, entrepreneurs, techies to sort of all get together and agree that they need to stop promoting their own types of business models, or at least promote business models which have a health impact as well. For example, why is there never a healthy option for me to eat in an airport? Why can't there be and when I say proper healthy food, I mean like actual healthy salad, not a Caesar salad, which is lettuce with mayonnaise on the top, which they consider healthy, right? But why is that not an option for people, or on an aircraft or any of these places? So yeah, I think there might potentially be really interesting business opportunities. I think we're all seeing it in protein today.
Yeah.
2 years ago, no one would talk to me about protein. Today, I can't go to any social gathering without people taking out their phones and then saying, okay, doc, now which protein should I be on? Which supplement should I be on? Etc. There are
Interesting.
so many.
Tell me about protein. Tell me about protein.
I mean, just think about how many protein companies have been launched in the last 1 year, right? Any social media feed, you will immediately see. And now the differentiation is they're all trying to be the cleanest protein, right? Who can minimize the number of ingredients on the packet, or give you the cleanest type of protein, or protein for vegans, protein for vegetarians, protein for carnivores, and proteins with these amino acids or those amino acids, etc. Which is great, because India is a protein deficient country. And we fundamentally do not consume enough protein, which is one of the reasons why we have so much muscle atrophy or sarcopenia, low muscle mass in our older years, which is why our bone quality is so low, and which is why we're metabolically so sick, because muscle is metabolically the most active tissue. So I'm very happy to see this. And this is a great example of business models which can potentially have health at the forefront. Same with supplementation. 90% of everyone's bloods who I look at are deficient in basic supplements, vitamin B12, vitamin D3, iron and folic acid. And certainly because we're not getting it from the food or the environment, we need to ensure that we are supplementing it in the right way, either with micronutrients in the food or supplements as well. So I think there are opportunities. It just requires the sort of mindset for entrepreneurs to say, you know what, I'm going to step up. I'm going to try addressing the health challenge. It may take me longer, but these are the money guys who are going to back me on that journey. And potentially over the next few years, we'll see new types of entrepreneurs and business models to address some of these things.
So when somebody is going to select a protein, maybe vegan, maybe plant-based,
Yeah.
maybe whey or whatever.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that somebody should look at? Like if these couple of things are
Sure.
there,
Yeah.
then this is a good protein.
Turn the packet over and look at the label. The number one thing you want to make sure you see is what are the total ingredients in that packet, right? Because a lot of protein powders, to make them more appeasing to the palate, there are carbohydrates, sugars, flavorings, etc. that are added to it. So you want to make sure it's as natural that you can manage. I understand that, protein is not the most flavorful. So try and find something which is minimal in the carbohydrate to protein ratio. So you're getting as much bang for your bucks. That's the first thing I would suggest. The second thing you want to make sure you look at, and now more and more companies are getting better at this, is that the unnecessary toxins, heavy metals, chemicals are removed. And by and large, I would say 90% of the companies today are making sure they're being quite open and publish those things. The third thing you want to look at is what is the protein that I'm consuming? Because people should appreciate that for anyone who's played with Lego, they'll understand that your model is based on the little Lego blocks. And a protein is nothing else but an amino acid sequence that has been conjoined together and bonded. So what are those individual units? You need to make sure that the complement of essential amino acids is present in your protein. And there are 9 essential amino acids. People should make sure that these essential amino acids are there, because if they're not there, then the protein is essentially useless. And again, a lot of the new age protein brands that reach out to me and that I talked to recently, they're making sure that those are in there as well. So that's what I certainly advocate people looking for. I'm still a big believer that you can get your macronutrients from the food you consume. It's just a lot harder in today's convenience culture age. So you don't need to be on a protein powder if you're getting your approximately 1 gram per kilogram of body weight from the food you consume. It's harder if you're vegetarian, because plant-based foods are not that rich in protein. It's also harder when you're vegetarian because the diversity of amino acids in plant sources is less than in an animal source.
What is a good vegetarian plant-based protein? Like actual food.
It needs to be diversity. So we were talking about dahi. So we do this at home, you take a muslin cloth, what the West calls Greek yogurt. You just let the liquid comes out and you make that sort of thick yogurt at home. One bowl of that sort of homemade Greek yogurt can have about 20 to 25 grams of protein, which is really good. Nuts and seeds and legumes and pulses and dals. These are all sources of protein, not necessarily high sources, but they're still sources of protein. Paneer, exactly. Then there are the tempeh, which is sort of a new food item which has been introduced in. Tempeh, soya. Again, they have certain health challenges as well because they're processed. So you need to be really careful of the quality and the toxins and the other chemicals that are added to it. But those could be your sources of protein as well. And, vegetables, green leafy vegetables and other fibrous vegetables, even a potato, believe it or not, does have protein in it. So we shouldn't think that there's zero source of protein. Now with the tech availability, so I'll just mention, I use the LLMs, the large language module apps, which are available on the phone. You can take a picture of the food and it'll tell you, and I put the prompt, tell me how many macros are there, what's the estimated calorie count. And if you just have that on your same thread over the course of the week, you can see what your macro consumption has been. Or just take a picture of a food in the supermarket and it'll do the same thing for you as well. Yeah.
Okay, talking about health, do we focus enough on the root causes or do we only treat symptoms?
It's sort of why I do what I do now. To no fault of anyone's. It's the institutionalization of how medicine is taught. It is very much a disease-based approach to quote-unquote health. Health used to be defined as the absence of disease. Now the UN has upgraded that definition. But if your lens of the human body is only the absence of disease, that means you're learning only about disease. And I spent 6 years in med school. Everything we did was we learned about disease. We did not learn about health in its truest form. So we have verticals or specialities. So if I have chest pain, I go and see a cardiologist. He or she is going to diagnose my heart. If I have chest pain, but I go and see a gastroenterologist, he or she is going to diagnose me with something else completely. If I have chest pain and I go and see a respiratory physician, he or she is going to diagnose me very differently as well. Because that's the blinkers.
Correct.
You have, I mean, in the West, I used to work in the NHS in England, we would have about 10 to 12 minutes per patient. The colleagues here in India who are working in the public health infrastructure, and I was a frontline medic during the pandemic working in the BMC, I had 20 to 30 seconds with each individual to diagnose whether they were positive or negative for COVID, right? Or they had some other infection or illness. So you can't take a holistic, comprehensive medical history on an individual and address, as you're saying, the root cause. So there's now been a gradual shift for, I think, a lot of physicians like myself who are trying to go back to a more functional approach to medicine, where we're interested in how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What are your lifestyle choices? Who do you spend time with? What do you eat? How much do you exercise? How do you sleep? What are the supplements you take? What's your family history? Because all of these things are important in diagnosing the root cause and then trying to address how to fix that rather than the plaster over the crack approach.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, how can, there's also this whole thing of be happy, be joyous.
Yes.
Gratitude, they say, is the highest form of vibration of a human being.
Sure.
So how much does being peaceful, joyous, happy, content, leaving the stress out, affect longevity and, living healthy and long?
I can't put a number on it, but I would say that it's probably higher than anything
that we just spoke about.
Absolutely. Harvard have been running the longest human experiment ever, where they've taken people who were born now 90 years ago, and they've been following them through. Every year, they speak to them, they interview them, they talk to them about their finances, their family life, their relationships. And undoubtedly, what has come out of that study, and I think there was a very famous TED talk about this, is that it's the quality of your human relationships which have the biggest role to play in your ability to live long, etc. So I think it's really, really important. Nobody wants to live a lonely life. Loneliness is epidemic. The Surgeon General...
There in all your developed countries.
Vivek, the Surgeon General of the US, talks about the fact that loneliness is now more dangerous than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. More people die of loneliness than smoking cigarettes in the US. And as we increasingly build a world which is more nuclear, digitally connected, but physically disconnected from each other, we're starting to see these things sort of percolate through. So I think all of the stuff you spoke about, which is the importance of daily gratitude, creating purpose, not finding purpose in the work that you do every single day, having a close-knit group of friends. The blue zones in Japan, they have the moai. In any of the blue zones, actually, you can study them, and they all have these tribes of people that live together and are part of that sort of community. So I think there's a lot of value in all of those things. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I just believe that you can be doing everything right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the checklist. You can be eating healthy. You can be breathing great air.
Yeah.
You can be exercising correctly.
Yeah.
You can be doing everything. But if you're leading a stressful life, none of that matters. Rather, having a low stress, I can't say stress free, but low stress, all of these things will complement that.
Yeah.
Tell me one thing, have you, this ikigai and everything has been really been talked about, and it's very fascinating because it's beautiful the way it is. Like Japan has these blue zones like Okinawa and everything where just people don't know what is happening outside their little community and shell. I mean, you go there, they don't even know what is happening in India or in Africa or in Israel or wherever.
Yeah.
Their average lifespan is above 100.
Yeah.
What are they doing right? Because they don't have the technology or the checklists and everything. They're just living.
Now, I noticed Hector's book on your bookshelf here. He and I were on a panel together a couple of years ago, and he was very kind. He signed mine, and we had a really interesting chat about this whole idea of ikigai. Anytime I go to a small village, and we were in the northeast of India last year for our son's birthday in Nagaland, and we were staying in this small village called Konoma, which is about 100 families. And walking around, there were the tombstones with the ages of when people died, and it was more likely the case than not that these people were above 95, 100 years old. I go to Ladakh every year, and every year when we visit these small villages, we talk to people. And so I think India probably has a blue zone or multiple blue zones. We just haven't had the opportunity to discover that.
Thank God for that.
But the people who live there, quote unquote, live a simpler life than what we have for ourselves today. They have a certain sense of rhythm. They have a certain sense of routine. They have a much higher regard and respect for nature than we do. They live off the ground, and therefore they respect the ground, and they eat pure, they drink pure, the air is pure, they spend time in the fields. They are in touch with the soil. The microbiome of the soil is very much an extension of the microbiome of their gut and of their skin. So I think there's a lot of ancient wisdoms that we have forgotten over the last many, many decades and centuries as we've been on this quest for materialistic modernism, consumerism, that if we can learn from that simplicity, we might just find that some of the hardest problems in life actually go away. I think life can be simplified, and we should each be striving to make it more simple. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. What are your life non-negotiables, like habits, routines, or values you never compromise on?
Wow. Okay. In no particular order of priority, for me, I love moving. Raina and I, we have this saying called Google Gum. Anyone who follows me on Insta will see this. It stands for get up, get out, get moving. So every day.
What is it again?
GU, so get up, GO, get out, and GM, get moving.
Go gum.
Yeah.
Nice.
It started as sort of this sort of fitness mantra of ours through the pandemic. And now in many ways, it's a philosophy of life where whether it's playing pickle, whether it's strength training in the gym, whether it's dancing with my daughter, whether it's playing cricket with my son, whether it's climbing a mountain or skiing or whatever, there needs to be some movement every single day, every week, every month, every year, which is pushing the body, and we can enjoy everything from that. So that's a non-negotiable for me. Getting some movement in every day is critical. Second thing is sleep. As I said, we have a public service announcement announcing every evening at 9 p.m. that it's time for bed. And I would say 5 out of 7 nights a week, we're quite strict with that, and we're quite good with it.
So you actually do go to
bed. Oh, yeah, very much. A great night is when I'm in bed at 8:45. And it does happen once or twice a week. And we get in, my kids are young. I've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. So Eden, Eva, and I, and we go in with our books. Raina comes in as well, and we're just sort of reading for a bit, and then, lights out by 9:10, 9:15. Those are the best nights, because then you wake up the next day and you feel like you're Superman in the corner.
I don't remember the last time I must have slept at 9.
I don't think Superman sleeps, having just watched the latest movie. Yeah. That's something I was thinking to myself. Yeah. But anyway, he gets his superpowers from other things. But yeah, sleep is a superpower for sure.
That's even when you're on vacation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, vacations for us, honestly, are quite active vacations.
Is it?
Yeah. We were in Goa last week. Every monsoon, we love to go to Goa to enjoy the greenery there. And we found a pickle court a kilometer away. So the whole family, from my father-in-law, who's in his early 70s, to my daughter, who's 7, every day, 2 hours, we were on the pickle court playing sport with each other. I think that's the beauty of pickle, that, low entry and the whole family can get together and play together. So that's a big non-negotiable, sort of movement and sleeping. I'm very strict with what I put in the body. Very strict, in fact, with what I put in the body.
Tea, coffee?
Yeah, so caffeine is limited. I use caffeine to my advantage from a performance perspective. So if I need to get a certain cognitive boost, or if I'm, doing a big physical event, then I will use caffeine to my advantage. But day to day, I avoid it because I've seen for myself how it disrupts my sleep cycle at night. So I sort of
I've started following that because I used to be heavy on caffeine.
Yeah.
Being a TV actor, I had no timings of
Right.
shoot. So
Sure.
I've shot for my longest shoot without sleep has been 72 hours. No sleep.
Right.
At that time, it's caffeine that's keeping you up.
No, but there's a certain. So if we look at the epidemiology of caffeine and coffee specifically, right, from sort of Africa, Ethiopia out, globally there is a longevity advantage of consuming 1 to 2 cups of caffeine every single day. What has happened, however, I imagine since 1990, and really the advent of the US-led coffee revolution, is the addition of sugar. And actually, the caffeine or the coffee that people in the corporate world, everyone out there drinking, is not the caffeine that the way it was used to be made, percolated slowly, distilled, filtered, clean water, healthy for you. It's basically 30 grams of sugar, if not more, actually. Milk, a lot of dairy, which is grievous to the gut anyway, and then all the other caffeine and the low quality beans, etc. So this is the disjoint that's happening in this sort of social narrative, which is, again, people, let's take a South Indian diet. People will often say, oh, doc, but my grandparents used to eat idli, dosa, all of this stuff every single day, and they would live to 80, 90. I say, yes, but the quality of the batter, the fact that your grandparents was probably in the field, harvesting, then toiling it to make it down, and then consuming it, versus you're getting an ultra processed version of that, putting it there with the low grade oil and then consuming it. So this is an important difference for people to appreciate. Yeah.
How can an individual identify or break free from these self-destructive patterns that silently are reducing a health span?
I talk about this idea called the awakening. At some point in an individual's life, they realize that they have a sense of mortality. It comes to different people for different reasons. For one individual, it might just be that a friend of theirs or someone at work has suddenly had a cardiac arrest or some sort of illness. For someone else, it might be the death of a parent. For someone else, it might be an illness themselves, etc. It doesn't matter how you get to that point, but once you get to that point, there's no going back. And therefore, you start to view your choices in life very differently. Most people who come and see me don't tell me, actually, doc, I want to see you that because I want to live longer. Maybe 10% of people say that because they've seen, the stuff we spoke about earlier. The vast majority of people who come to see me saying, doc, I don't have the energy that I used to have 10 years ago. Or, I'm a young parent now. My kids are at the age that they want to kick a ball or have me bowl to them. I just can't do it anymore. So this word energy is what I hear a lot in sort of day-to-day parlance. And that can be a fantastic motivation for an individual, right? Getting healthier for your spouse, getting healthier for your kid, getting healthier because you want to do something aspirational like run a half marathon or a 10K race or go scuba diving on a boys trip or any of those things. So that's how I sort of get into that mindset. And then our job is sort of as a coach, counselor, catalyst, is to simplify the science or distill it down to the basics that you can empower an individual to make the right choices forever. Because I can't be with them for the next 50 years. But if I can sow the seeds to help them understand and interpret life around them, look for the data points in their ecosystem, whether it's the wearable data, whether it's their annual or half yearly blood tests, and then start to make smarter choices, my job is done.
Okay, I have these last 3 questions for you.
Sure.
Let me combine these 2 questions.
Okay.
Number one, billionaires are investing in this anti-aging research and longevity and will this ever become democratized, or it'll always be for the wealthy? Because all the research that is happening in the West.
Yeah.
India is not putting in that much of effort or money or resources into research.
Yeah.
But as Indian bodies, our health challenges and our in general challenges are far different than what the other countries or other parts of the world are facing. So we following that research, which is based on their genetics, their life. How do you overcome that?
Sure. My dear friend and mentor, Professor Brian Kennedy, he used to be at the Buck Institute. He's now in Singapore. He often opens his longevity talks with a joke, which is where he says that the model organisms used to be the worm and the lab rat. The model organism today is the Silicon Valley billionaire or the ultra HNI. Often the most evidence that we are now collecting in today's longevity fields are based on things that the ultra rich are doing for themselves, and then trying to extrapolate that at sort of a societal level. So I totally agree with that perspective of what you're trying to start out. And it's important for us all to sort of recognize that. And therefore, whenever you're listening to anyone on social media, including this conversation, always be a cynic. Always think about or question the authority of that individual. And is that individual really using, first principles of science? Or is it just anecdotal information which is being shared with you online, which is very easy, therefore, to sway the individual to then make a choice in? So that's the first thing. The second is, yes, you're right. And I've certainly seen that even after Brian's visit, this is the other Brian now, Bryan Johnson, the one you mentioned, after his visit to India, I remember there was a moment on the podcast where he had, I think, Nikhil Kamath, Nitin Kamath, and a bunch of others. And they were talking about, who's the top longevity physician in India. And my name was mentioned there. And there was a massive surge that happened. But when people reached out to me, what was interesting, I thought, they're going to ask for that approach. And like, Doc, we don't want the don't die mentality. We want to live healthier. We want to simplify our lives. And maybe there's a cultural nuance in India. I think we spiritually understand this idea of birth and rebirth and the certain cyclicity and rhythmicity of life. So maybe people aren't interested in immortality and they're okay and more comfortable with the idea of death, but they want it to be a good life through that process, right? So I think you're right. And what our job in the sort of the physician clinical science world is to look at the data and the science and try and tease out, okay, the microbiome of an Indian living in India is very different to even, I have diaspora in Singapore, in the UAE, in London, in New York, etc. Their microbiomes are different because the exposure to the environment, the food they consume, the life stressors, all of that is different. So how do we ensure that we're tailoring the conversation and the intervention to people who are here locally? I think it is changing. It is advancing. Avocado won't work for the average Indian today, but the RDBS will work for them. But how do you make sure it's the right type of rice and dal and roti and all this stuff to make them healthy?
What is RDBS?
Roti, dal, bhat, shak. My wife is Gujarati, so they have RDBS, which is roti, dal, bhat, shak. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. What, according to, because you just we spoke about Brian visit here, because I have so many questions. If I had Brian sitting opposite me, I would have so many questions for him. Right. Number one being that, first of all, are you trying to live healthy or are you just trying to live long? Because if you're just trying to live long, then a person in coma is also living long.
Sure. What a great. Yeah. Nice analogy.
I mean, with modern technology, with the life supports of adrenaline and this and that, you can keep your heart pumping. Sure. With a ventilator, you can keep your breath, and your machine will keep showing. I can keep you alive for 500 years.
Yeah.
I mean, is that questionable? But second of all, how can you be so sure about your life? Like you said, there is a till now we've understood that 120 is our benchmark of the expiry date of a human being.
Yeah.
How do you view that? Because there are so many other variables. One plane crash.
Yeah.
What just happened?
Yeah.
You might be Bryan Johnson might be doing everything correct, and one earthquake or one tsunami or one plane crash can finish it all.
Sure.
I mean, all of that goes into a tizzy.
Yeah.
So for me, it's always interesting to understand that why don't we like a question which I wanted to ask you was, what is more important? Adding life to your years or years to your life?
It's the first, which is which is life.
Adding life to your years.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, I'm in my early 40s. I try to, or we as a family rather, try to make sure every year counts. That involves, specific time out with the kids. That involves going on a big expedition every year. That involves carefully curating time with our friends, even in our busy lives, etc. Because I'm sure, if I'm lucky enough to get to that 9th decade of life, then I will hold more dear those moments rather than anything else. So I totally agree with you, which is it's just bring more joy back into life, and then maybe as a side effect you can live longer, but bring more joy back.
I mean, this is probably why I wanted to have this podcast, is because everybody's just talking about longevity as number of years. Sure, longevity is not just the number of years.
Yeah.
It's the moments you've actually lived.
Yeah.
For me, I might be a critic. I might sound critical. A Bryan Johnson way of living is not living. You're just surviving.
Right.
You're not living.
Yeah.
Because you're doing so many things in a day that you're missing out on family, friends.
Yeah.
Those little moments that you could have actually lived. That when you're on your deathbed, when you look back and you're like, hey, I lived a good life.
Exactly.
Rather than,
Yeah.
hey, I lived. But thank you, Doc, for coming on Unlock with Kunal Jaisingh. It was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Kunal.
अगर आपको आज का एपिसोड अच्छा लगा और आपने इस एपिसोड से कुछ सीखा तो प्लीज इस एपिसोड को 2 लोगों के साथ जरूर शेयर करना, ताकि उनकी जिंदगी में भी एक नई चीज अनलॉक हो, एक नया इन्फॉर्मेशन अनलॉक हो। और प्लीज मेरे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कीजिए, इस एपिसोड को लाइक कीजिए और बेल आइकन जरूर दबाइए, ताकि जब भी मेरा एपिसोड लॉन्च हो आपको सबसे पहले पता चले।